Good morning. It is Thursday morning, July 3rd, and the time is 7:13 a.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, which would make it Eastern Daylight Time. And we are here for our Through the Bible in 1 Year reading. Today is day 184, I believe. I had it a second ago. Yes, day 184. And today's reading is Second Kings chapters 1 through 5. So if you would like to grab your Bible and a breakfast beverage or breakfast bagel or breakfast donut or whatever, or lunch or dinner, wherever you may be, go ahead and do that. And let's pray before doing the reading. Father, I just thank you for this time. I thank you for all that you are doing, God. I thank you for your presence, oh God. I thank you for those invitations in the middle of the night that you extend to us. And you give us the choice. Come away and be with me. And it is always so wonderful and energizing and fulfilling and joyful when we're able to say yes. You draw us in by your love. There is absolutely zero condemnation when we decide to say no. But it is important to remember that we have missed out on a blessing because he doesn't extend the invitation for no reason. And the reason is always, always, always for our good. This is why Paul said, therefore I buffet my body and make it my slave. He will give us an opportunity to get the rest that we need. Because he knows we need rest. But he is also sovereign and he is also all-knowing. And he is perfect in all his ways. And so there's going to be times where he extends the invitation because he wants to test our hearts, but even that's not in condemnation. He wants us to be able to recognize the condition of our own heart and whether or not we love him enough to obey, even when it's inconvenient or it costs us something. And this is kind of turning into a prayer teaching, but I'll end it here. That's, as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I have to say about that for now. But chew on it and be encouraged. Determine now before the Lord. Make the decision now. Yes, Lord, I want my answer to be yes the next time you do something like this. Anyway, Second Kings. That's the prayer for this morning. Second Kings, chapter 1. Now Moab revolted against Israel after the death of Ahab, and Ahaziah fell through the lattice in his upper chamber, which was in Samaria, and became ill. So he sent messengers and said to them, Go, inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, whether I will live from this sickness. But the angel of Yahweh said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Now, therefore, thus says Yahweh, You shall not come down from the bed where you have gone up, but you shall surely die. Then Elijah departed. So the messengers returned to him, and he said to them, Why have you returned? And they said to him, A man came up to meet us and said to us, Go, return to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus says Yahweh, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are sending? I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm repeating the same verse or not. Anyway, focus, Mike. I can do all things. Thus says Yahweh, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are sending to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore you shall not come down from the bed where you have gone up, but shall surely die. And he said to them, What kind of man was he who came up to meet you and spoke these words to you? And they said to him, He was a hairy man with a leather girdle girded about his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent to him a commander of 50 with his 50. And he went up to him, and behold, he was sitting on the top of the hill. And he said to him, O man of God, the king says, Come down. And Elijah answered and spoke to the commander of 50, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from heaven, excuse me, and consumed him and his 50. So he again sent to him another commander of 50 with his 50. And he answered and spoke to him, O man of God, thus says the king, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and spoke to them, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So he again sent the commander of a third 50 with his 50. Then the third commander of 50 went up and came and bowed down on his knees before Elijah. And he begged him and said to him, O man of God, please let my life and the lives of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from heaven and consumed the first two commanders of 50 with their 50s. But now let my life be precious in your sight. Then the angel of Yahweh spoke to Elijah, Go down with him. Do not be afraid of him. So he arose and went down with him to the king. Excuse me. Then he spoke to him, Thus says Yahweh, Because you have sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, is it because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore you shall not come down from the bed where you have gone up, but you shall surely die. So Ahaziah died according to the word of Yahweh, which Elijah had spoken. And because he had no son, Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? 2 Kings chapter 2. Now it happened when Yahweh was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind to heaven, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for Yahweh has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not forsake you." So they went down to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that Yahweh will take away your master from over you today?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Be silent." And Elijah said to him, "Elisha, please stay here, for Yahweh has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, I will not forsake you." So they came to Jericho. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that Yahweh will take away your master from over you today?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Please stay here, for Yahweh has sent me to the Jordan." And he said, "As Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, I will not forsake you." So the two of them went on. Now 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance. But the two of them stood by the Jordan. And Elijah took his mantle and folded it together and struck the waters, and they were divided here and there, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. Now it happened when they crossed over that Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please let a double portion of your spirit be upon me." And he said, "You have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken away from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so." As they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and it separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. And Elisha was seeing this, and he was crying out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." And he saw Elijah no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. He also took up the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and returned and stood by the bank of the Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and struck the waters and said, "Where is Yahweh, the God of Elijah?" Indeed, he himself also struck the waters, and they were divided here and there. And Elisha crossed over. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho opposite him saw him and said, "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha." And they came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. Then they said to him, "Behold now, there are with your servants 50 excellent men. Please let them go and search for your master, lest the Spirit of Yahweh has taken him up and cast him on some mountain or into some valley." And he said, "You shall not send." But when they urged him until he was ashamed, he said, "Send." They sent therefore 50 men, And they searched 3 days, but did not find him. So they returned to him while he was staying at Jericho. And he said to them, Did I not say to you, do not go? Then the men of the city said to Elisha, Behold, now the habitat of this city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad, and the land is unfruitful. And he said, Bring me a new jar, and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. And he went out to the spring of water, and threw salt in it, and said, Thus says Yahweh, I have purified these waters. There shall not be from there death or barrenness any longer. So the waters have been purified to this day, according to the word of Elisha, which he spoke. Then he went up from there to Bethel. And as he was going up by the way, young boys came out from the city and mocked him and said to him, Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head. Then he looked behind him and saw them, and he cursed them in the name of Yahweh. Then 2 female bears came out of the woods and tore up 42 lads of their number. And he went from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. 2 Kings chapter 3. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, though not like his father and his mother. And he took away the sacred pillar of Baal, which his father had made. Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. He did not turn away from them. Now Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep breeder, and used to pay the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But it happened that when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. And King Jehoram went out of Samaria at that time and mustered all Israel. Then he went and sent word to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, saying, The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go up with me to fight against Moab? And he said, I will go up. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses. And he said, Which way shall we go up? Pardon me, excuse me. And he answered, The way of the wilderness of Edom. So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and they went around on a 7 days' journey. And there was no water for the camp or for the cattle that followed them. Then the king of Israel said, Alas, for Yahweh has called these 3 kings to give them into the hand of Moab. But Jehoshaphat said, Is there not a prophet of Yahweh here, that we may inquire of Yahweh by him? And one of the king's servants, one of the king of Israel's servants answered and said, Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here, who used to pour water on the hands of Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, The word of Yahweh is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Now Elisha said to the king of Israel, What do I have to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother. And the king of Israel said to him, No, for Yahweh has called these 3 kings together to give them into the hand of Moab. And Elisha said, As Yahweh of hosts lives, before whom I stand, were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I would not look at you, nor see you. So now bring me a musician. And it came about, when the musician played, that the hand of Yahweh came upon him. And he said, Thus says Yahweh, make this valley full of trenches. For thus says Yahweh, you shall not see wind, nor shall you see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, so that you shall drink, both you and your livestock and your cattle. And this is but a light thing in the sight of Yahweh. He will also give you he will also give the Moabites into your hand. Then you shall strike every fortified city and every choice city, and fell every good tree, and stop all springs of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones. Then it happened in the morning, at about the time of offering the sacrifice, that behold, water came by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. Now all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, and they summoned all who were able to put on armor and older, and they stood at the border. Then they rose early in the morning, and the sun shone on the water, and the Moabites saw the water opposite them, as red as blood. Then they said, This is blood. The kings have surely fought together, and they have struck down one another. So now, Moab, to the spoil. So they came to the camp of Israel, and the Israelites arose and struck the Moabites. So they fled before them, and they went forward into the land, striking down the Moabites. Thus they tore down the cities, and each one threw a stone on every piece of good land, and filled it. And they stopped all the springs of water, and felled all the good trees, until in Kir Hareseth they let its stones remain. However, the slingers went about it and struck it. Then the king of Moab saw that the battle was too strong for him. So he took with him 700 men who drew swords to break through to the king of Edom, but they could not. So he took his oldest son, who was to reign in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering on the wall. And there came great wrath against Israel, and they set out from him and returned to their own land. 2 Kings chapter 4. Now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared Yahweh. And the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves. And Elisha said to her, What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, Your servant woman has nothing in the house except a jar of oil. Then he said, Go, ask for vessels for yourself from those outside, from all your neighbors, even empty vessels. Do not get a few. And you shall go in and shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour out into all these vessels, and you shall set aside what is full. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They were bringing the vessels to her, and she poured. Now it happened that when the vessels were full, she said to her son, Bring me another vessel. And he said to her, There is not one vessel more. And the oil stopped. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go, sell the oil, pay your debt, and you and your sons can live on the rest. Now there came a day when Elisha passed over to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she prevailed upon him to eat food. Now it happened, as often as he passed by, that he turned in there to eat food. And she said to her husband, Behold now, I know that this is a holy man of God, passing by us continually. Please let us make a little walled upper chamber, and let us set a bed for him there, and a table, and a chair, and a lampstand. And it will be, when he comes to us, that he can turn in there. Now it happened that one day when he came there and turned in to the upper chamber, and there he lay down. And he said to Gehazi, his young man, Call this Shunammite. So he called her, and she stood before him. And he said to him, Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Call this Shunammite. So he called her, and she stood before him. And he said to him, Say now to her, Behold, you have been careful for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Would you be spoken for to the king or to the commander of the army? And she answered, I live among my own people. So she said, so he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Truly, she has no son, and her husband is old. And he said to her, and he said, Call her. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. Then he said, At this season next year you will embrace a son. And she said, No, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your servant woman. Then the woman conceived and bore a son at that season the next year, as Elisha had said to her. Then the child was grown, and the day came that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, My head, my head. And he said to his young man, Carry him to his mother. Then he carried him and brought him to his mother, and he sat on her knees until noon, and then died. Then she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door behind him, and went out. And she called to her husband and said, Please send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and return. And he said, Why will you go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It is well. Then she saddled a donkey and said to her young man, Drive and go. Do not hold back the pace of the ride for me unless I tell you. So she went and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. Now it happened that when the man of God saw her at a distance, he said to Gehazi, his young man, Behold, there is the Shunammite. Please run now to meet her and say to her, Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, It is well. Then she came to the man of God. Then she came to the man of God to the hill and took hold of his feet. And Gehazi came near to push her away, but the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is bitter within her, and Yahweh has hidden it from me, and has not told me. Then she said, Did I not? Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up your loins, and take my staff in your hand, and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not answer him, and lay my staff on the boy's face. But the mother of the boy said, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will. Yeah, sorry. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 30. But the mother of the boy said, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not forsake you. And he arose and followed her. Now Gehazi passed on before them and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So he returned to meet him and told him, saying, The boy has not awakened. Then Elisha came into the house, and behold, the boy was dead and laid on his bed. So he entered and shut the door behind them both and prayed to Yahweh. And he went up and lay on the child and put his mouth on his mouth and his eyes on his eyes and his hands on his hands. And he stretched himself on him, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house once back and forth, and went up and stretched himself on him. And the boy sneezed 7 times, and the boy opened his eyes. Then he called Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her. Then she came in to him, and he said, Take up your son. Then she came in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground. And she took up her son and went out. Now Elisha returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in the land. As the sons of the prophets were sitting before him, he said to his young man, Put on the large pot, and boil stew for the sons of the prophets. Then one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered from it wild gourds, filling his cloak, and came and sliced them into the pot of stew, for they did not know what they were. So they poured it out for the men to eat. And it happened that as they were eating of the stew, they cried out and said, O man of God, there is death in the pot. And they were unable to eat. But he said, Now bring flour. He threw it into the pot and said, Pour it out for the people that they may eat. Now there was no harm in the pot. Now a man came from Baal Shalisha, Baal Shalisha. If at first you don't succeed. And brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. And he said, Give them to the people that they may eat. And his attendant said, What? Will I give this before 100 men? But he said, Give them to the people that they may eat. For thus says Yahweh, They shall eat and have some left over. So he gave it before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to the word of Yahweh. 2 Kings chapter 5. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man with his master, and highly respected, because by him Yahweh had given salvation to Aram. The man was also a mighty man. The man was also a mighty man of valor, but he was, a leper. Now the Arameans had gone out in marauding bands and had taken captive a little girl from the land of Israel. And she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, I wish that my master were before the prophet who is in Samaria. Then he would cure him of his leprosy. Then Naaman went in and told his master, saying, "Thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel." Then the king of Aram said, "Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So he went and took in his hand 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothes. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, "So now, as this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may cure him of his leprosy." Now it happened that when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God, to put to death and to make alive, that this man is sending word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? But know now, and see how he is seeking a quarrel against me." Now it happened when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent word to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Now let them come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots, and stood at the doorway of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored to you, and you will be clean." But Naaman was furious and went away and said, "Behold, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of Yahweh his God, and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" So he turned and went away in wrath. Then his servants approached and spoke to him and said, "My father, had the prophet spoken with you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then, when he says to you, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God with all his camp, and came and stood before him and said, "Behold now, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So now, please take a blessing from your servant." But he said, "As Yahweh lives, before whom I stand, I will take nothing." And he urged him to take it, but he refused. So Naaman said, "If not, please let your servant at least be given 2 mules' load of earth, for your servant will no longer offer burnt offering, nor will he sacrifice to other gods, but to Yahweh. In this matter, may Yahweh pardon your servant. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, Yahweh, pardon your servant in this matter." And he said to him, "Go in peace." So he went from him some distance. Then Gehazi, the young man of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, "Behold, my master has spared this Naaman the Aramean by not receiving from his hands what he brought. As Yahweh lives, I will run after him and take something from him." So Gehazi pursued Naaman, and Naaman saw one running after him. So he came down from the chariot to meet him and said, "Is all at peace?" And he said, "All is at peace. My master has sent me, saying, 'Behold, just now 2 men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes.'" Then Naaman said, be pleased to take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothes and gave them to 2 of his young men. And they carried them before him. So he came to the hill, and he took them from their hand and deposited them in the house. Then he sent the men away, and they departed. But he came in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, Where have you been, Gehazi? And he said, Your servant went nowhere. Then he said to him, Did not my heart go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Is it a time to receive money and to receive clothes and olive groves and vineyards and sheep and oxen and male and female slaves? Thus the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your seed forever. So he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. And that is our reading for today. That was 2 Kings chapters 1 through 5. Join us again at 12 noon for our midday prayer focus. That's Eastern Daylight Time, 12 noon. And until then, go in the knowledge and the awareness of the presence of God with you, of His great love for you, and of His Holy Spirit dwelling in you. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the people of Israel. Pray the promises and prophecies of Scripture over them. And pray without ceasing for whatever it is that God has called you to, whatever He has given you influence over or authority over. Pray from that place of His presence, that place of stillness and rest, where you can hear His voice and know His heart, so that you know that what you are praying comes straight from the heart of the Father. And be blessed and be a blessing.